name is Brittany Castillo, and this is the Sovereign Roots podcast. And in this podcast, we will talk, or deep dive rather, into one particular topic each month. A topic that is mostly personal, something that it is very exciting or interesting to us at the time. Today, we are lucky enough to be joined by my husband, Alex. He is going to be my co-host today, and in future podcasts, I'm sure as well, because
Rather that.
we talk a lot. I talk a lot. We talk a lot
I'm a
about
good supporting
things.
character.
I really think that this podcast was created to create a community of people that talk about things that happen in real life and not just the pretty parts, which the pretty parts are fun and exciting and we love talking about those too, but also talking about real experiences is something that we are down with. And so, without further ado, today's topic is grief and miscarriage. And the reason why we chose this topic, or I guess we came to this topic, was because it's something that happened pretty recently and is something that we thought could never ever happen to us. And I was actually very proud the way that we handled it as individuals and couples. I shouldn't say handled how we were able to go through the experience as a couple with a 3-year-old, and to come out of it not completely devastated. And so to begin this kind of conversation, it's going to be very relaxed. and as our daughter sleeps upstairs, we're hoping to get through this entire podcast without having an additional feature, although that may happen. And so, we're recording here now in Japan, on mainland Japan, in our home on Yokota Air Force Base, which is pretty cool. In our cozy little corner. There will be many other podcasts recorded, I'm sure, in this spot, because this is the most convenient spot. But I do want to mention we are hoping to get a video version and an audio version uploaded. So the video version should be on YouTube, and the audio version is obviously on Buzzsprout if you are listening to it, or obviously on YouTube if you're watching it. Thank you for watching. So without further ado, with my long intro, I'm going to get into the topic for today. And so to get into the topic, I'd like to tell you a little bit of how we got into this most recent pregnancy that I had. And I would say that we were talking about having another kid as our lives are getting a little bit easier, or we're getting more comfortable.
A little more freedom.
A little more freedom with a 3-year-old, as they're a little more autonomous and they can do things for themselves, and there's not as much of that like newborn feeling anymore. And so we were kind of chatting. We both have siblings. We were chatting about whether we thought having another baby was in the cards for us, if we wanted to add to our family or not. And
it was funny, we just noticed her playing off to the side, and we both kind of paused and looked at each other. And you know how you say something without having to say something?
Yeah.
And I just said, what if she had a sibling? And then you're like, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, it's weird. And I had always said after I had Lainey, we had her in 2018, obviously she was 3 years old. We had her in 2018. I always said I did not want to do that again. And I would say that Brittany, that version of Brittany, is a completely different person than who I am now. So I didn't want to replicate that experience of giving birth again, although we know now that it would have to be different. And so after we both kind of discussed it, and I discussed it at nauseum with you,
Yes.
and kind of outsourced to my friend Ruby and outsourced to my mom, and just kind of said like, is this the right choice or not? I finally came to the realization like maybe not right now. I'm not really sure if I want to, so just probably not right now. And of course, the universe says, right now, okay. And
Universe had different plans.
yeah, I had a feeling that although I don't use birth control or anything like that, and so sometimes my menstrual cycle comes when it wants to come, as long as it's in the month. I'm usually pretty cool about it, and that changes depending on how well I've been eating and things like that, so I don't usually get worried about being pregnant. As long as my menstrual cycle comes at some point in the month, I'm usually pretty cool about it. So it hadn't really come, and it was towards the end of a month, if I remember correctly, and I remember my husband Alex texted me and said, hey, I'm coming home from work, do you need anything? I'm gonna stop by the commissary, do you need anything? And I said, oh, I just pick up a pregnancy test, it's just to rule it out. Yeah, just to rule it out. I know I'm not pregnant, let's just rule it out. And of course my unconscious I knew I was pregnant unconsciously, and so he was on the phone when he got home to change his plane ticket so he could go to the States, and he's on hold with what was it, American Airlines?
Yeah, American Airlines. I'm on the phone with American Airlines, and she comes down the stairs and she's holding something, and I'm I'm on the phone. I'm about to purchase a ticket. I'm pretty sure I overpaid for whatever ticket I was buying.
We didn't hear anything he said.
I'm pregnant.
Well, I was mouthing it, and I think he thought I was holding a pen.
Yeah.
So I'd taken the pregnancy test, and it was as soon as any of my pee got onto the stick, it was immediately pregnant. There was no waiting, there was no timer. Although I was so casual about it, I really didn't think I was pregnant. When I peed on the stick, I was haphazardly this is just to make sure I'm not pregnant. I definitely didn't know, intellectually know I was pregnant. Yeah. My consciousness knew. And so, we were actually really quiet that night, and we were kind of in shock. And then the pregnancy symptoms started really quickly. The nausea was really bad, and the aching body. Although this time I could feel my womb getting bigger. I could feel space being created in my uterus. I could feel my hips loosening up. I felt like everything was really loose, and I felt pregnant almost right away. And just a outside tip for any women: you never need a pregnancy test to tell you you're pregnant. You would find out if you didn't pee on the stick. and that's actually, I just recently learned, is a term for wild pregnancy, is when you don't look to external sources to validate what you already know. And that's a big theme in this story, so I just like to add that in because I knew I was pregnant. I knew something was off. My face hadn't been breaking out. It wasn't, I didn't have the same feelings that I usually get. Although I should mention, I was feeling a tad bit aggressive. And just unlike myself. That is totally a change. I'm not an aggressive person. I'm just a direct person. But I was feeling very aggressive for no reason. Everything was quick to irritate me, and that was a new pregnancy symptom, as I felt like the hormones came very quickly this time, opposed to what I remember when I was pregnant with Lainey. And so I felt pregnant right away. It just validated all the things I was feeling before, and kind of shocked off, oh, I ate too much bread, that's why I feel bloated. But I could feel the space being created in my womb, and even putting on leggings was uncomfortable to have pressure on my belly. And so I was wearing really loose clothing around my belly, and it felt better to be like that, and I felt very connected to the baby. And I felt like the baby was a girl. There was no doubt in my mind that she was a girl. And she told me very early on, and again, take or leave whatever we say. This is our experience. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be your experience. But I do believe that women and men, but women, when there is a life being created inside of you, that if you tune in, you can find out certain things about that soul that's decided to come and be in your belly. And so there were a lot of times where I would sit and just kind of feel into what I was feeling in my womb. And she told me her name was Ocean. It's just what popped into my head. And every time I thought of her, it was with the name Ocean.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything to you during that time because we could not agree on baby names, even when we named Elena, her daughter. And we call her Lainey most of the time anyways.
We agreed on.
We couldn't agree on any other names
Yeah.
but Elena. So I hadn't said anything because I knew Ocean probably wasn't going to be a popular name with him. So I just kind of like held back. And
Felt a little Kanye West.
yeah, it's like a very, it's a very abstract name. Even though the ocean is our favorite place in the world.
I get it.
Anyway, so that's long story short. I could feel. Not long story short. We're just beginning. I could feel myself becoming more pregnant. The life was like duplicating inside of me, and I just felt really connected to the energetics of everything that was happening to me. I was able to be a lot more present with what was happening too, which is very different. I disassociated.
Completely different mindset as well.
Yeah, and during my pregnancy with Elena, you were deployed most of the time. I mean, not at the very beginning, but
Yeah, the first 3 months I was home, and then
Yeah.
was gone.
and so that, although I wasn't really connected to myself either when we got pregnant with Elena. So it's just different experiences with
Yeah.
different times in our lives. It's more experience, and I say experience as in having Lainey and all the life lessons that I've learned since then. So yeah, being pregnant and then getting excited because I could feel pregnant and I looked pregnant. You could see a little belly growing there, and I could
A lot sooner than.
Yeah. super low, so I knew it wasn't gas or bloating. It was really, it was really, really low, and I felt flutters a lot in my belly, a lot of fluttering, and I knew it was her. Again, didn't think it was gas, like I just knew it was her. When I would feel it, it was kind of like she was like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm here. And honestly, when I felt the fluttering is when I felt like I received messages from her, like when I would kind of like drop in and check in, because I would feel a physical fluttering in my actual physical body, and then I would take a second and kind of feel into her. So yeah, I went all the way up to 10 weeks. 10 weeks in like 3 days. So 10 weeks and 3 days is the time in which I miscarried. So through that time from when we found out we were pregnant all the way up to about 10 weeks, everything was fine.
Yeah.
I really, really wanted to do this pregnancy different, like be very conscious of what I was putting in my body, making sure I had the best vitamins because I was so nauseous. I couldn't eat a lot of very nutrient dense food because the smell of it or the look of it or something. I mean, all the women that have ever been pregnant know that like heightened sense of smell and nausea just knocks you out.
Definitely the healthiest you've ever been, even in relation to the things that you put on your body or in your body.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no fragrances, and I don't really wear makeup, but if I do wear makeup, it's non-toxic makeup and lotions. Don't have any crazy chemicals in them. It's just a lot more of a conscious understanding of what I'm putting in on, what I'm having around my body, things like that. And so everything seemed normal. And with COVID-19 happening, I probably shouldn't have said that because I'm probably going to get flagged for saying that. But with that happening, I wasn't comfortable going into the clinic to have them confirm that I was pregnant. I could see that I was pregnant. And so I wasn't in a rush to go see a doctor right away because everything felt fun. I was feeling, other than the nausea, which I know is normal because I had that with Elena, and a quick Google search will tell you anything these days, Dr. Google. And so, yeah, I hadn't even gone in to have them confirm I was pregnant because I could see it, I knew it, and that actually felt really good. It felt really good not to just run to the doctor and have them confirm everything that we knew. It felt good to kind of just like be in
Yeah.
being newly pregnant together.
And
Yeah.
just, went day by day,
Yeah.
let it sink in and really understood what was going on. So.
Right. Yeah, it felt good not to go to the doctor right away. And so once Coco's trying to make.
She's been messing with my feet.
That's funny. Our dog Coco wants to be a part of the podcast. So yeah, at about 10 weeks, I had a little bit of spotting. Actually, it was probably about the 9-week mark where it had a little bit of brown spotting. And any woman out there that has ever had a menstrual cycle, the brown spotting that you get right before you're about to menstruate, right before you're about to bleed, you get like the old blood. And usually you see it like in your underwear or something, and then you kind of know those like the warning signs of your uterus, like, hey, we're about to pop off now. And so when I had pop off, that's a technical term, folks. So when I had brown spotting, it was just a tiny bit. It wasn't even like the lead up to a period. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, oh, it's old blood. Whatever. And then it went away. It only lasted a day. And so not even a full day. It was just in the morning time. It was like, oh, it's probably like implantation bleeding or something like that. Of course I Googled it.
And you talked to a couple people as well.
Not the first time around, because it went away in the afternoon time and it didn't happen again in the evening. So I was like, who knows?
I had absolutely no clue.
No, I didn't tell anybody about that 9-week one because I wasn't alarmed by it because it was brown. And I was like, it's whatever. And then when it happened again at the 10-week mark, it was like right on the 10-week mark. It was 10 weeks. I don't think it really matters at this point, but 10 weeks, I had the brown spotting again. And it was a little bit more than last time, but again, I wasn't super alarmed. I was just like, okay, I'll watch it. And I even put a little pad in my underwear so that I could tell, or a little panty liner so that I could tell, like, about how much I was bleeding. And so I told Alex about it and just said, like, hey, I'm having a little bit of bleeding. I think I went too crazy. Listen to this. Went too crazy cleaning the house yesterday. That's probably why I'm bleeding. And of course, making an excuse about going too hard.
But I also, just from you telling me that, I kind of felt like something was up. That's why I offered to come home.
Yeah. Yeah, I knew, but the first day, I was very casual about it. I was just Googling, and Dr. Google said, brown spotting is fine because that's old blood. It's not a big deal. It's when you see the red blood, it's when you should start to worry. So, I was trying to stay calm and stay off my phone and not Google anymore. Just kind of hang out.
Racing.
Yeah, let my body relax a little bit in case I did overdo it. I wasn't really sure, so I was trying to play into all the other scenarios that I thought it could have been or what could have caused it. And of course, my husband, and just so everyone knows, we are a military family, and so we do not choose when our lovely, as my daughter says, dadai, would leave. And so when Alex leaves, he doesn't really get to say, no thanks, guys, I'm gonna hang back. So he was supposed to go to
It was 4 days away.
Australia.
But, no, it was a week away.
Yeah, when the brown spotting started. And we were going to build a fence in our backyard. And so we were doing all of that stuff. We have a dog, and it's just easier, especially with me being newly pregnant. It was like, oh, this is going to be easier if we just build a fence. We'll do it ourselves.
Yeah, I had 4 days to put the fence up.
Yes, 4 days to put the fence up because you had other things you had to do. So, yeah, we
But
were
I figured
focused
it
on
would
that.
be, it'd be a lot easier for you to, as you got more pregnant.
Yeah. It was
Like
a
the
good
dog,
planning.
yeah.
It was good planning to have the fence. We're actually very grateful to have the fence now. It's so much easier. But let me just make sure we're still recording, just in case. Yes, we are. Okay. Yes, we put up the fence. So we were focused on that.
Yep.
I was really putting all my time into that too, trying not to worry about if I was going to continue to bleed. And I did continue to bleed, but it was brown. And again, it wasn't a lot. And this is the second day. And I had told him, well, I think I might have told you the second day. I think I was casual on the first day and was like, it's going to go away like last time. I think I told you the second day because I remember, pretty sure I told you on the second day. So you could hear the worry in my voice, like, I'm bleeding.
Yeah.
Like, it's a little bit more than yesterday, but it's not, still wasn't a lot.
That's when I
Yeah.
probably about time.
And you're like,
ago.
sit down,
Yeah.
relax, don't touch anything, don't do anything. You're gonna sit on your butt all day today and just hang out. You're not gonna go too hard. And yeah, at that point, I was starting to get concerned because it was the second day and it had picked up a little bit, but again, it was still brown and it was still like on and off. It wasn't a consistent bleed. And so that night when we were laying in bed, I had a feeling, and so our 3-year-old daughter sleeps with us still. And so
She commands the baby.
yeah, she was in the middle, and I had kind of like turned over, and I just got that fluttering in my belly, and I was like, oh, okay, well, hi Ocean, like what's up? I put my hand on my womb, and I just had this feeling, like the word miscarriage popped in my head, and I was like, what? No, like I'm healthy. I'm 27 today? Am I 28 now? I'm going to be 29. I'm 28. I'm 27 or 28 years old. One of those. I'm in my 20s. Jeez. Okay, so I was like, oh, I'm young. Like, that's really what my thought was. I was like, I'm really young. I wouldn't miscarry. So when the miscarriage came into my head, I was like, that's weird. And it was all kind of happened in a second. It wasn't a long thought, but I was just like, oh, I'm young. I'm really healthy. Well, I'm healthier than I've ever been. There's some other things I could use improvement, but like, in basic terms, I'm relatively healthy. I'm at a healthy weight, things like that. So I just kind of waited out in my head, and then I just got a feeling like she was like pulling away. Her energy was kind of pulling away, and I put both my hands on my womb, and I just told her, like, if you have to go, like, don't worry about me. Really don't worry about me. Like, I will be okay. We will be okay. And Lainey was right next to me in the middle of the bed, and I was like, I've got Lainey. Like, I'm happy. If you have to go, you can go. And I remember just kind of like, shedding a tear and just kind of, it felt very final. And I had done a lot of work learning about death and all the feelings and the grief that can come with it, and
How to celebrate it.
Yeah, how to celebrate, how to have a relationship with that part of existing, because at some point, our physical bodies could pass away, could die. And so I had done work before even this baby was even anything, any type of thought in our head. And so I knew that if the more I resisted what I was feeling, the more it was going to be amplified. And so I knew that was the right thing to tell her at that time, so that there wasn't like a schism between us. I felt like if I had resisted it hard, it would have made me feel bad, and then I wouldn't have that relationship that I felt like I had with her. So I didn't tell anybody that, because again, I was still talking myself out of this whole miscarriage thing. Even though I told her it was okay if she wanted to go, I still wasn't sure that she was going. But I just wanted her to know that was an option. And of course, when that word popped into my head, of course it never left. It didn't leave my head. But I was dead set that it wasn't going to happen to me. It only happens to other people. And I'd never heard of anyone talk about a miscarriage before. openly. And I was around a lot of women growing up. You know, my mom had a lot of female friends, and they would have like female only parties, and I was invited to those, like like Pampered Chef parties and stuff, where we would like get together and chat and gab about each other and gossip and things. And nobody ever stopped and talked about like miscarriage. It was always babies being born. I want to have more babies. Hell no, I will never have more babies.
It's always like a speed bump conversation.
It really is.
Okay, I'm sorry. Like nobody really knows how to react.
It feels awkward.
Yeah, it's awkward. So they're just kind of like, oh, speed bump. Let's get past this and move on.
And it's just like when you say like, oh, so and so, my friend died. Everybody's like,
I'm so sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, I gotta go get lunch now. So, are you okay? Can I get you a turkey sandwich? You're like, I don't need a turkey sandwich right now. But yeah, it is always awkward. And even Google, man, like I Googled miscarriage. It's all scary stuff. Like it makes you feel scared. Like it really is fear-based. And I'm not saying that, again, there are many different ways that a baby can choose to leave. There are many ways the body can give birth to a baby, whether it's full term or not. So, in my experience, this is just what happened to me and the choices that I made. I didn't feel like something really serious was happening. I didn't have any crazy headaches or any type of overwhelming feeling that I was in danger.
Like I said, it was the healthiest I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was just spotting. But again, the thought of miscarriage was like, I'm healthy. You know,
and yes, you're working out every morning.
Yeah.
Going for long walks.
I mean, and not even rigorous working out, just going for long walks. And it wasn't killing myself over it. It was just going for walks, pushing a stroller. So, yeah, it was the third day where I had a little bit more blood. And this time, I had responsibilities at this time to take 2 kids to a bus stop. And I was kind of doing it like a side hustle. And so I would wake up and take my daughter with me, so my husband had to go to work, take my daughter with me, and we'd walk these 2 little kids to the bus stop. And I went to their house to go pick them up. And as soon as I saw their mom, she asked me if everything was okay, and she looked me in the eyes. And I could tell she really wanted to know if everything was okay. It wasn't like a casual, like, you okay? Like, I don't really care what your answer is, so I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. But she looked at me with, like, concern, like, you okay? And I was like, trying to, like, take a drink and, like, like, I'm pretty sure I'm miscarrying. And then she was like, I'm sorry, are you okay? And she could tell I was about to cry. And she's like, sweetie, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm miscarrying. And then it was just like, bleh. Like, I just, like, threw up all my emotions all over her table, and we sat there, and she was like, I am so sorry, but it might not be. I've had friends, and she's, of course, sharing these experiences.
All the scenarios.
Yeah, she's like, I've had friends who've bled before in their pregnancies, and they just had to get monitored, and then everything was fine, and you just never know. Maybe it's twins and things like that. So I am a twin, and he has twins run on his side of the family, and
I was convinced it was twins.
We would be so lucky, right? So I started getting these other scenarios in my head now. And I don't know if you as a listener or a viewer can tell, this is a form of denial.
Yeah.
I had already known I was miscarrying, and instead of accepting that, I went into full-blown denial. I was really holding on by everything I could. Like, really holding on. And I think you were too, because...
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I convinced myself. I was telling her, oh, no, it's probably twins, because her mother had kind of the same reactions.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's probably just twins.
And I mean, I had another friend who had a miscarriage, and I was messaging her, and I mean, God bless her. She was staying up really late to talk to me about this on, like, Facebook Messenger of all places. We weren't even talking on the phone, because, you know, we're in that new age connection all the time. she was like in Washington at the time, so she was staying up late to talk to me about it and to make sure I was okay. She had a miscarriage before her now pregnancy, and she was like, well, you know, it could be normal for some people. You never know. And so she's like, you should go to the doctor and get an ultrasound. I was like, oh, man, I could go to the doctor and get an ultrasound. I was like, I don't really want to go to the doctor. I'm not really sure. And she was like, well, I mean, I think actually before that I had gone to the doctor to confirm my pregnancy the week prior.
Yeah.
Like I just peed in a cup for them to tell me I was pregnant. I had plans of doing a home birth and things, and so I wanted to just kind of get that out of the way in case there was any question later on down the road, so that they knew I was pregnant. Weird, but military. So, yeah, I had gone to the doctor, and so I was like, well, you know, I can call the OBGYN clinic because it's now confirmed that I'm pregnant, so I can be accepted into the OBGYN clinic and just request an ultrasound. I mean, who wouldn't give me an ultrasound? Actually, now that I'm thinking about this, retelling the story, I think it was the second day that I did that, and they wouldn't give me an ultrasound. Was it that day?
At the clinic, no. You had to go to
Oh.
you had to go to urgent care.
That was in the morning.
Yeah,
Yes, it was okay, I'm not getting my timeline mixed up. I do remember it. Yeah, the third day. So I had tried to call and they wouldn't answer. And you were still at work.
Yep.
And so I was like, hey, I'm going to try to run over there because that lady that I had spoken to earlier in the morning said they have an ultrasound clinic in the morning time. They don't really advertise it, but they do ultrasounds in the morning. You should try to get there before 9 a.m. Well, I got there at like 8:30. So it was plenty of time if I did need an ultrasound. I got there at 8:30 and they would not give me an ultrasound because I hadn't been through the intake process. They didn't know anything about me. And that's a story for another day. That would take like a whole hour to explain. And so I was really frustrated that I couldn't get in. I was asking for an ultrasound and I felt like now I'm in like the fighting stage. I was in denial, but now I'm like ready to fight people because I just want to know. Like, just get in there, tell me what's going on. And again, if anybody has listened to this story at all, you can tell I was in straight up denial.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to know right then. I couldn't give it any more time. And so, in order for me to get seen, I had to go to the urgent care.
Yeah.
And I had a plan to not be a part of the medical system as much during this pregnancy. As long as I felt like I wasn't in danger, my baby wasn't in danger, I felt healthy and capable, things like that, I planned on not participating a lot in the medical system. And that was my personal choice, our choice together, that's what we were going to do unless we felt like we needed to. And so I was kind of hyping myself up to go in there and just say, I just want an ultrasound.
Yeah.
That's all I want. So I went in there pretty confident, worried, but confident. And I did not receive the care that I expected. However, again, that's a story for another day, and I promise I will talk about the, and not to play on words, but the miscarriage of justice when I was in there. The misfortune of the events, and having looking back on it now, having had looked back on it now,
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 blah. I got a lot of words in my mouth. Now that I've looked back on it, I can see that I created this entire scenario when I went to urgent care. I created it for myself because the times I had participated in the medical system pregnant with my daughter, it was always things being done to me, but I was always so dissociated and out of my body during those.
I think it's also important to caveat before we go on any further that she is actually, she worked in the medical facilities.
Yeah.
For military, so she knows the processes and she's very cognizant of what's supposed to happen.
Right. Oh yes, processes are my jam. Any type of rules and ways that things are supposed to go down, I was like hyper aware of that, especially in shouldn't say in the regular medical system, in the civilian medical system. It's more particularly the military medical system that I'm very aware of. We were stationed in Okinawa before we were here on mainland Japan, and I had the fortune of working in the naval hospital there. And so I got to rotate through every single clinic, whether it was the emergency department or a specialty clinic or the multi-purpose ward, inpatient, outpatient. I had seen it all. I've got a little taste of each one.
Yeah.
And I understand also that the military does not get a free pass when it comes to caring for other humans. And I hold them to a very high standard because I was an airman myself. I was in the Air Force. I understand ranking systems and supervisors. I'm not someone that is blind to the whole system in itself, so I wouldn't say I'm well versed. However, I do know if a woman were to come in and talk to me directly and say, I think I'm having a miscarriage, that situation would be handled a lot differently than a situation of someone who has an ingrown fingernail or maybe broke their arm or something, have a sinus infection or even have the virus, It's a different level of compassion, and my dog's looking at me straight in the eyes right now with like the softest look while I'm saying this. It's creepy. Super sweet though. Anyway, so when I got to urgent care and I said, I just want an ultrasound, I think I'm having a miscarriage, I was messaging you the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was basically telling him what I wanted, and I wasn't listening to the things.
You were just affirming, I think you were.
Oh,
I think
yeah.
you were like, that was intentional for you.
I think I needed to say it.
Yeah.
I didn't say it out loud, it was just all text messages, because they came in and out of the room a bunch of times, left me alone a lot, for long periods of time. I think I was there for like 3 hours.
It was
It was a long time. Time doesn't really exist. It's a construct anyways. But yeah, there were no windows in there or anything, so I couldn't tell what was going on. Yeah, I was messaging him saying, I don't want to be here. They're not listening to me. I don't feel heard by them. In so many words, probably used the F word a couple times. There were a lot of times where it was very unprofessional, and again, I'll get into that in another podcast, because that experience, like I said, I now know I created that experience for myself. Being pregnant with Elena, I was dissociating a lot. I had a lot of stuff I was going through, and I'm laughing because our dog is quietly growling now because we're not touching her or paying attention to her. I dissociated a lot, and I wasn't connected to Lainey in my belly, and I just let a lot of people do things to me because they said it was good for me. I never ran it through like my bullshit meter. I never really asked myself if I wanted to do any of those things when I was pregnant with Lane. It was just more like, the doctor would say, you need to go get all of this stuff done, and I would just do the checklist like a good girl.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even ask why. And I never, no shame or no guilt trip or no judgment to anybody that does that, because we are indoctrinated into a system that tells you to be a good girl, be a good boy, do what I tell you to do, because I'm in a position.
Of course, they have your best interests, right? Like,
you would hope so. However, I'd like to really hit home, specifically coming from my own experiences being a woman.
Yeah.
Run that through your bullshit meter real quick. Say, okay, I'm really grateful that you are giving me your opinion on what you think is going on or what you think is good for me. I'm going to take this home, do a little research, marinate in it, see if it's good for me, and then I will make a choice as to whether or not I want to complete some of the things on this checklist. And I'm just saying, as a woman, that can be really scary to tell a doctor in a room alone with them, and it could be for men too. Like when a doctor tells you to do something and it seems like they want you to do it right now, if you were to be like, nah, thanks for your opinion though,
Yeah.
I'll take this home, because they're like, no, you need to go get your lab work done
That's
now.
when knowledge really is power, right?
Right, in the position of perceived power, because doctors do not have power over you. It's a position of perceived power.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important to mention.
And having the knowledge to know that you have that,
Right,
that
right,
that it's up to you.
right. So with Lainey, I just checked that list. So this time, like I was saying, I created this scenario for myself. It was going to be different this time, because I told myself as soon as I found out I was pregnant with baby number 2, Ocean, that this was going to be different. I declared it, actually. This is all going to be different. The pregnancy is going to be different. The birth's going to be different. The raising of the child's going to be different. The whole experience. And so when I went into the urgent care, I really believe I called that experience in. Even though it felt traumatic at the time, I really think I called it. I know I called all that in, because I was 100% in my body and 100% aware of what everyone else was doing, and I was making eye contact and realizing that they weren't speaking up for me when I felt like I couldn't really. I did speak up for myself, but when I was told that I wasn't going to get something, I was disregarded. Yes, I was completely just, you are the patient, I'm the doctor, I say you do this or you don't get to see your baby on an ultrasound. And so the entire experience felt very traumatic. I went in for an ultrasound. I was told that I needed to get exams done and lab work drawn and all kinds. I needed to complete at least 3 things before the doctor would allow me to get an ultrasound. And I told her that I didn't really want to do an intravaginal ultrasound, which is when they have this like wand and they insert it into the vagina, into the uterus, and it feels very invasive. So I told her that I just wanted the abdominal ultrasound. And so she tried, but she half-assed it.
Yeah.
I could tell she wanted to just get me out.
And that's the thing that your knowledge of knowing what the processes
exactly
are supposed to be.
And the airman that was doing the fetal Doppler before the ultrasound, he kept picking up on my heartbeat. So he was telling me like, "Oh, that's the baby," and I said, "No,
Yeah.
that's my heartbeat." And he clearly did not know what he was doing, and so he did find a heart rate. But I don't know if it was because I was so
elevated,
nervous, agitated.
Yeah.
I was having to talk him through it.
Yeah.
Fetal Dopplers are notoriously inaccurate. Excuse me. If you look up anything, women out there that are pregnant or want to become pregnant, do your research about ultrasound. You hear about it all the time about women getting ultrasounds and they see it's a girl and then the baby comes out a boy. It does not change its anatomy in that time. Just look up ultrasound and how it works. And so he did find a heart rate that was faster than the previous heart rate that he'd picked up that I told him was mine. And so he counted that as life.
Yeah.
And so that, I knew it wasn't right.
Yeah, and
I knew it wasn't right. I was like, he
you
got a
texted
heartbeat.
me, you said he got a heartbeat.
He got a heartbeat.
And I was like, sweet. What are we worried about?
Yeah, and it was around the range newborns or babies or fetuses, especially, and young children even have a faster heart rate than adults do. And so I didn't see the number, but I could hear the tone on the fetal Doppler while he was doing it, that it was faster.
Yeah.
And so I was like, oh yeah, just trying to grasp onto anything that might be there. So she came in and did the ultrasound, and she half-assed. She was all over the place, didn't really give it much thought. She's talking to another woman that she has shadowing her, who I found out later is just a volunteer. She doesn't know anything, she's just a volunteer. And And so she told me I could not get, or that I had to get a vaginal ultrasound. I didn't want to do that. Asked for any other means. Could you get like a fetoscope or something? She told me that they don't do that anymore, which is basically, it's like a stethoscope, but for the womb. Some midwives, it's a practice that's being less and less practiced.
Yeah.
It's not a
It's
technological
very
way.
limited urgent care also.
Yes. It's not really practiced much anymore besides midwives, and people that have then taught other people how to do it. It's like a non-technical way to hear a heartbeat, and it might have been too soon as well at 10 weeks. I asked for anything but the intravaginal ultrasound. Like, can we do anything else? And she said, no, I'm gonna send you down to get it. And so I messaged you and said she wants to do the intravaginal one. I don't really want to do it. I already went through all those other things to get her to do an abdominal ultrasound. And so, I mean, I had I'll talk about it another time, but so many other things that happened before that. I went down and got the ultrasound. It was a man, it was a dark room, there was a lady there. Again, didn't really get the care I wanted. He didn't see anything. I had seen ultrasounds before of a 10-week-old. It didn't look like anything was really in there. Like, you could see the yolk sac, which is usually where it looks like the baby is. Like, they usually find the yolk sac first and then look around for the baby. He didn't see anything, and he told me to get up and get dressed, and like we'd just done something dirty, and he was over it, to hurry up and get dressed. And then they dismissed me, or they took more blood, and then they dismissed me, and asked me if I was satisfied or if I felt like all my questions were answered. And the doctor came back and way later, like 45 minutes later, and just said, we're not sure what the ultrasounds say. The OBGYN hasn't read it yet, but he's heard about your case. He hasn't read it yet. It could be a miscarriage, but we want you to come in again on Thursday. This was a Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
We want you to come again in on a Thursday to get more blood work done, because we think you could still be pregnant. We're not sure yet. He hasn't really read the ultrasound. I was like, okay. So I left mad. I left really, really mad. And this is probably going to be a long podcast because this is a long story. I'm seeing the time now. Thank you for sticking with me. But I left mad and came home and just needed a good cry. And I even texted ahead of time, like, hey.
No, you need time before you came home.
I need a second. Yeah. Well, I walked home real fast.
Yeah.
Real fast. And just so you know, I didn't like walk a long way. The urgent care is like right next to our house.
2 blocks.
Yeah, it would be worthless to get in the car and go there. It's actually much better. I wasn't bleeding that much when I went there. Even after I left, I wasn't bleeding that much. Anyway, so I came home and had to close the door and kind of like gut cry.
Deal with it.
I felt like trespassed upon, like I had just been violated, and I knew that when you're feeling that much, that shaking your body can help a lot. Dogs do it when they're like overly anxious and stuff. I knew shaking my body could help me just kind of like move some stuff out, because I was like so contracted and nervous and scared and all that. And so we were still kind of holding on after that.
Yeah.
Like, it could possibly, we don't know yet. They
Well,
didn't
we
read the
didn't get
ultrasound.
we didn't get anything definitive.
Yeah, they
either,
didn't tell me
so-
anything. Which, again, I knew what it was.
Yeah.
But we were like, oh, we don't know yet. And I was like, well, I know in my head what it is. I called my friend Ruby. She came over. We had some good cries. I got to tell my story as much as I wanted to tell it and work through it. And really, it had nothing to do with the miscarriage. It had everything to do with what happened at the urgent care.
You made your peace with it before.
Yeah, I just needed to like work myself through it a little bit and talk about it and like get my head around it, because I was already, on the edge. Nobody externally had told me I was miscarrying.
Yeah.
Nobody said it directly to me. Like, you're miscarrying.
Nobody wanted to either.
Nobody wanted to. No. And that was really, that's what left us with that
myself
speck.
Included. Myself
like
included.
that speck of like it could still be nothing.
Just wanted
But that night.
any piece of hope. Yeah.
But that night the bleeding and the cramping started.
Yeah.
And I know now that when you put things in your vagina when you're pregnant, it can cause cramping.
Mm-hmm.
Even cramping after having any type of like intercourse or anything when you're pregnant can cause cramping. And I knew with them checking my cervix and scraping my cervix and putting all kinds of things inside there, I mean, sometimes you can even cramp when you're not pregnant. You can cramp after getting a vaginal exam, any type of vaginal exam, because there's things in there. And that really picked up the bleeding. So it was, again, just telling that story, the quick synopsis or the long-winded synopsis of that story so that any woman, right, or any man really, if you have that kind of relationship with your partner, just to understand what you might be going into when you walk into a medical setting and you say, I just want an ultrasound. What could possibly happen? That they may have prerequisites. The military loves to follow rules, and they use those rules and checklists that they couldn't possibly give you an ultrasound without going through the checklist first. So just understand that when you go in for a medical intervention, there will always be other things that come along with that. Not to say that that's in poor taste or that you wouldn't be met with compassion, because everyone's different, but just know that that could happen to you. And to have a partner, whether it's a husband or not, just have a partner in crime. Like my friend Ruby came over and let me cry all over her and hug her.
When
being
I took
in
it
Japan,
out on the fence.
yeah, being in Japan, I didn't have my family around, and so it was nice. My husband took care of Lainey, and I had enough space to cry and process all of that. So yeah, from there the bleeding just started to pick up, and luckily we have a very awesome friend group, and again, my friend Ruby went and got groceries and took care of us and picked us up whatever we needed and offered to help in every way, so I didn't have to leave the house and I could relax. And Alex took care of Lainey and just kind of gave me some space. And we got a phone call from some nurse or somebody telling us that I was on the ultrasound had been read. She was talking to me as if we knew this information, that the ultrasound has been read. She just wanted to confirm that I would come in on Thursday to get the blood work, and this blood work was to confirm the pregnancy hormone. If the pregnancy hormone was still in my blood, they wanted me to come on Thursday. And she said, well, since you're only measuring 6 weeks and 10 days or something like that, it's very unlikely that you're still pregnant. And she didn't say miscarriage. She said it's very unlikely that you're still pregnant, although you could have just gotten it wrong. Because she asked me to confirm again when my last menstrual cycle was. And I said, I know what it is. I know the last time we had sex. We have a 3-year-old. We don't have sex a lot. And that's not to try to diss our marriage. We're busy people.
Trust me, we try.
We're doing stuff all the time. So it's not like we have a bunch of scenarios that we need to try to figure out when we could have gotten pregnant. I knew when my last menstrual cycle ended, and I knew the last time I had sex. And I knew I didn't get a period. And it was confirmed that I was pregnant, and so she kept saying that maybe I didn't understand or couldn't remember the correct date. So she was even holding out that line of hope, like that misperceived line of hope of like you could still be pregnant. And yeah, that confirmed to me. As soon as I heard the 6 weeks, I was like, yeah. And tried to tell her my story about what happened in urgent care, and she tiptoed around it a lot, and then as soon as we hung up, we looked at each other and just like, we knew. If I was supposed to be 10, we weren't that far off.
Mm-mm.
We knew. But we didn't say it. We didn't say it. You were like, well, we'll just, you'll go and get your blood work and we'll figure it out, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just go get blood. Like, we didn't want to say it.
Nope.
We both were thinking it. Because when we looked at each other, I know we were like, yeah. And that's what it is. But it was just kind of like, well, we'll get blood work and then we'll find out, It is whatever.
There's always
So, yeah,
chance.
it was always a chance,
Yeah.
yeah. And so you had taken Lainey, Ruby came to drop off groceries, and we talked for a while, and she left, and I went to go to the bathroom, and I passed a little clot, tiny, it wasn't tiny, but it was like a quarter size,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, oh,
Yeah.
okay. So I was kind of there for a second, like, all right. And then I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a turkey sandwich. My friend just brought me. It's funny that I said turkey sandwich earlier. I actually was making myself a turkey sandwich. That was not planned. I went to go make a sandwich, opened up the bread, had this feeling. Like, I wasn't really sad about the first clot. I was just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I kind of, knew it was a miscarriage the whole time. And I wasn't really holding on to much hope after I talked to that doctor. So I was like, I'm never going back to that freaking clinic. Unless I'm dying, I'm not going back there. And so I went to go make the sandwich, and I felt Ocean. And she was like, hey, I'm going to go. And I even left my bread there. I'd already put mayonnaise on my bread. I left my bread there on the counter and went upstairs to my altar. I have a little altar in our bedroom. Because it's one of the doors that locks. You have a 3-year-old. It locks. And so I went upstairs, I lit a candle, had all my crystals there, pulled out one of the books. It has a really beautiful poem. It's not even a poem. I didn't know what you would call it. It's like a nice little prayer.
Mm-hmm.
Not to a god or anything like that, but just something nice to say. And it's really made for people who are trying to let go of their bodies, to let their consciousness come out of their bodies. And so I read that, and it's similar to go ahead now, go on now. It's okay. I'm happy. I still love you.
Yeah.
Saying all those things, and I'm gut-wrenchingly crying because I know she told me she's leaving right now, and I said all the things I wanted to say to her. I told her I was so sorry that I couldn't hold her longer, that I wasn't going to be there, or that I wasn't able to give birth to her and have her be a part of our family, and I was so sorry, and I just kept saying I'm sorry, and that I loved her, and it's okay, and I'm going to be okay, and all that stuff. And it was actually really, I cried hard. The silent crying. You're crying so hard that your abs hurt and you're gasping for air. It was really intense.
Yeah.
But it felt really nice.
Man.
I mean, you weren't here.
No.
Which I also very grateful for. I love our relationship, and I love that we can cry and be around each other. But it was really, really, really nice to not have Lainey ask me if I was okay, not have anybody come in and ask me if I was okay, that I had that time alone, and I was able to be with myself and Ocean and do it how I wanted to do it, and not feel like there was a time crunch of oh, Lainey's knocking on the door, or somebody went potty and needs me, or something like that. All the random things that happen. So
I still have all the mosquito scars.
yeah, from building the fence outside.
From being just, trying to keep her occupied outside.
Yeah, it was very, and I really do believe that she told me at that time for a reason, so that we could have that moment. And after that, within an hour, the bleeding picked up, and I passed my first big clot, and it was this size. Not an egg shape, but if anybody is not watching the video, it's the size of an egg.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty big, and a lot of blood had, excuse me, come out. And I was upstairs, and you were making dinner. I came downstairs, and I left it. I left the clot in the toilet because I was like, oh. And I remember standing over the toilet like, okay, and I was like, you know, doing like the Rocky bounce, like, okay, all right, and like shaking my arms, like, okay, this is real, this is really real, because I mean, I'd said bye to Ocean, but nothing had really shown me that she was leaving.
Physically,
like
yeah.
And
Physically seeing it.
right, physically seeing it.
Yeah.
And so when I saw that clot, and I felt it leave my body, and I heard it drop into the toilet, and I was like, oh man. But I thought that was it. I thought that's all that it was going to be. I was like, that little clot. I mean, it's little now considering I've been through the whole thing. But
No,
like,
it wasn't.
I thought it was just that. So I came downstairs. I left it in the toilet because I couldn't flush it. And I just said to Alex, like...
And nobody, like, tells you what to do.
What to do, yeah. I was like, hey, so I'm pretty sure it's over. I'm pretty sure that I just passed it.
Hold on. I have to say, what a gangster she is. Like, I couldn't, like, if you guys could picture this, she's sitting or standing in the bathroom with her hands bloody. And I'm just like, what is going on?
It was the second time around that I got my hands bloody.
Oh, yeah.
The first time I didn't catch it, it just like fell out.
Yeah.
But I remember coming down and being like, so I think
this
it's
was a long
over.
process,
Yeah. This is going to be a long podcast. But yeah, and we cried. And for the first time, we're like, yep, this is a miscarriage for sure. Like 100%, definitely. And so, we got Lainey down to sleep that night. And I went into the bathroom. And I knew there was a clot. I knew it. I could feel it. And it was slow. And I remember being like, oh, babe. Because when I stood up, so for any woman that may ever have a miscarriage to understand the weird feeling it is, when you're menstruating and you're wearing a pad, and I don't wear tampons anymore. When you're wearing tampons, you don't really feel much of what's happened when the blood leaves your body. When you stand up, sometimes you feel it a little bit, but it's not like alarming. But after you've been sitting for a while, sometimes when you stand up, you're like, oh, I might be leaking. I need to go change my pad. Well, the miscarriage, it's like 3-4 times that feeling. It doesn't feel like pee. It doesn't feel like you're pooping yourself. It feels like just a lot of fluid gushing out. And it's blood. And so when I would stand up, it would be like a lot. And I'd be like, ooh, and have to like run to the toilet. Because it's not like something that you'd be comfortable just like walking around after you felt that. So I began running to the toilet. So this is the second time another clot's going to come out. And I'm sitting on the toilet and it's hanging out of me. And TMI, but I mean, real life. The first thing I thought when I was sitting there was like, I thought I missed it. I thought I missed it the first time. I thought that's all that was I thought I was just going to bleed.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if you were told you were 6 weeks, you wouldn't assume it would be a lot. And I just had no conception of, like, I was building a whole home in my womb. It wouldn't just be a tiny clot. It was a lot.
Yeah.
Like, a lot. So it's hanging there, and I'm like, how? Like, you can't, like, push it out. So, like, do I sit here and wait? And I was like, well, you know, I wanted a free birth. I wanted to have birth at home. And I was like, this is my opportunity. Like, this could be my baby. Like, I don't know what it is. It's covered in blood. You don't see, like, heads or feet or anything. It's still 10 weeks along. So, not to say that women who miscarry further on don't or actually see parts. I didn't see any, like, physical features or anything. It was just clots of blood. But that was Ocean's home. So, every piece that came out of me was a piece of her and a piece of me. And so I pulled it out of my body. It felt like the right thing to do. And I had read and listen to a lot of a podcast called the Free Birth Podcast, where they talk about women's instincts when they're giving birth, to just go with them, because your instincts, you know what to do. You don't need somebody else to tell you, like, now it's time to catch your baby. Like, you know to catch your baby when your baby's coming out. And so I always told myself, I trust my body. I trust my body. I trust the process. I trust my body. I trust the process. I kept saying that when I was in urgent care. I said that when I first found out I was pregnant. That was like the biggest affirmation to me. Like, my body knows what to do. So when I pulled that clot out, I was like, I'm holding my baby.
Yeah.
I'm holding a part of my baby. I was covered in blood. It's a very surreal to think about that, but it felt like the right thing to do. And I was like, it's blood. Like, I can clean it off. It's my blood. It's not like somebody else's blood. I'm not playing. I'm not playing with it. Like I'm not. You know, it's not anything that's grotesque or.
No,
it was actually a very beautiful moment for me to like hold it, because I'm like, I'm holding my baby, and then he's like, are you okay?
Yeah.
And I'm like dripping with blood, sitting on the toilet holding this giant clot, and I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
Yeah.
It feels wrong, and it, like, again, that's like a capstone of this. Like, what are women supposed to do? Why is nobody talking about this? Like, I've held many pieces of my baby in my womb and didn't want to put it in the trash can, didn't want to put it in the toilet, wasn't really sure.
We weren't really prepared for it either.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't ever think a miscarriage would happen to us.
No.
Would happen to me. And so when I was holding that, I was like, I don't know what to do. What do I do? So I'm like talking to myself. It's like, well, I've talked to Ocean already. Like, I've told her it's okay if she wants to go. I know that her and I are cool. Like, this is just her physical leaving me. It's still very tough. And I was like, you know what? The next time this happens, I'm gonna have like one of those little tiny mason jars, and I'm gonna put it in the freezer in a mason jar, closed up so nobody touches it or anything. But I'm gonna save it, put it in the freezer, and then I'll figure out where to go from there. So it'll give me time. Like, nobody's gonna try to eat it. It's in a tiny little mason jar. And so I put that clot in the toilet and washed my hands and just kind of was like, all right, this is real again. Like, just had to keep reminding yourself, like, damn, this is real. And then that night, I woke up at like 2 in the morning, 2 or 3 in the morning. I think it was like 2 in the morning.
Yeah.
With labor pains. This is not some Braxton Hicks. By the way, Braxton Hicks is a male doctor. He made that up about pregnant women, by the way. He's the guy that coined that term. A man who has never given birth. This was no like pretend contractions or like a little bit of discomfort. I could not lay down.
No.
Like, and they were asleep still.
She had to come downstairs, and
I was like trying to breathe in the bedroom. I was like, trying to do it quietly, like cover my mouth while I'm breathing so I don't wake anybody up. And I was like, I need to walk. I need to move. And so every time I felt the contraction, like the wave of it, and again, I had not prepared when I was pregnant with Lainey. I did not know that contractions would be intense. I did not know breath work. I did not know, Wim Hof, again, now that I know. Knowing that you're not in danger when physical sensations are happening to your body.
Yeah.
That was not on my radar with Lainey. This time, I had breathing techniques that I could, and the affirmation, I trust my body, I trust the process. The pain is not unbearable when you are telling yourself, really affirming to yourself. You're not just telling yourself. This isn't something that I passively believed. I truly did believe, like, my body is doing what it needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
And even when I'd known, when that moment happened in the bedroom with me telling Ocean that she needed to go, I knew that I would be okay through all of it. I knew nothing bad was going to happen to me. And so every contraction wave that came, I would squat and I would breathe through it. not hold my breath, not clench and like try to force myself to not feel it. It was like, I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it because guess what? This is the birth of my baby. Like, I'm getting the free birth that I told him I was going to have. I told him, like, when I do a free birth, I may be by myself. You may not be there. Like, you could be there, but depending, I mean, any woman that has ever been through something that's painful or uncomfortable, you really don't know who you are until that moment happens. Like, you might think you want somebody with you in the room, but then they're not helping you in the way that you think you might need help, or you want to just do it yourself, you just want to be alone. Like that, you don't know until you're in that scenario. And so I would breathe through it and then I would just walk because that's what felt good. I needed movement, and the dog and I walked outside for a while. I was like sending voice notes to my friend Bex and my friend Liza and just like chatting about what was happening and how I was feeling, and that like, this is awesome. Like, I'm going through labor. Like, yes, I'm miscarrying, but I get to experience labor. Like, it's so awesome. Like, that I would still be able to give birth to my baby. Like, it's not being taken from me, you know? Like, nobody was taking it from me. I was feeling all of it and being there through all of it. So it's actually really cool.
Yeah.
I was really tired, but it was really cool. And it didn't feel like something that just happens to everybody. Like, I feel like childbirth, everybody's just like, yeah, it happens the way it happens. Like, how special, it just really put like a capital, it capitalized it and emphasized it of like, birth isn't just like a random event that happens. Like, every single one is special, and it is a spiritual experience, let me tell you. When you're in pain like that and you're breathing, you're so connected to your body. I was literally like feeling my womb contract and relaxing my body while my womb was contracting. Like, just insane things that I didn't think I could do. And then I fell asleep on the couch because the contractions had kind of slowed down. I was down here for like 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
Laid down on the couch, and then you came down. You're like, "Hey, want to go lay in the bed?" I'm checking on you to see if you're still alive. And I'd just gotten comfortable enough, like, where the contractions were still kind of happening. They were kind of happening, but it wasn't like super, like I needed to move. So that was the biggest thing. And then after that point, there wasn't no cramping anymore. It was just, I was just bleeding. And from the day that it started to the last day I bled. So I did not know, again, that I would bleed for as long as I did. And at no point did I feel like I was in danger or
No, and
that it wasn't supposed to happen like that.
That was the main thing we promised each other was, like, if it got too crazy, obviously we would go to the emergency room. Like, no. Yeah.
It didn't. It was still like, I was still felt like myself. I mean, I was still sad. And of course, like I shouldn't say of course, because this is a completely random, it felt like a random thing when we thought of miscarriage before it happened to us. Like, it's just another thing that happens to people.
Yeah.
And so that feeling of, once you know it's a miscarriage and you're no longer pregnant, and all those future plans that you'd made in your head, even though you knew you shouldn't have planned them because nothing is ever certain, you still plan it and you still hope that it comes out to be the way that you want it to. So after all the crying and everything, and you're by yourself or you're just sitting around, feels like you're in, like, time is not a thing. Time doesn't exist. You're like in this like twilight zone. Like, I felt like I was in a fishbowl.
Yeah.
Like, everything around me was like liquid. Everything was moving really slow. I didn't have a lot of thoughts in my head. It was really quiet, and I was just very like, I shouldn't say stoic, but I just felt like very.
We weren't somber either. It was just.
No, it was
like,
just
thing, like, I don't know, like.
We were just very in the moment.
Yeah.
We weren't planning on what the next moment was going to be. or like, yeah, I felt like it was just like very in the moment, but it was like very slow. If that makes any sense. Everything felt really slow.
I was a little more
And
worried, just because I was
I was gonna say,
leaving. I was
what
leaving.
were you thinking? What were you thinking? Like, from the point where we got that phone call from the nurse saying that I was like 6 weeks and some days, because after like it was, I don't really remember talking with you much after that. Like I don't remember much
No, I
of
really
us like
just
interacting.
gave you. I gave you the space that you needed.
Well, yeah,
because
yeah. But what were you thinking during that? Like,
I just tried to remain positive. Tried to stay busy.
yeah,
I took care of Elena,
Yeah.
and
it's like a bucket.
I really just tried not to think of the worst.
Mm.
And I also, in the back of my head, I was a couple days from leaving for 2 months, so my mind was, man, what if, you know, you took this and went down a different road, you know?
Oh yeah, like not handle it well.
Exactly.
I shouldn't say handle. Handle's like not the right word, but not really like.
Reacted
Yeah.
to it, or even, you know, depression. You know, people get depressed about certain situations, and
Yeah.
you never know.
It's a valid concern, yeah. Yeah, and then especially have a 3-year-old with me and be alone. Yeah, it's definitely a valid concern. But then with like so I had like that whole labor and then the bleeding. So from the day it started to the day it ended was about 16 days, right? Something like that. Yeah, it was only like 2 weeks.
I was already gone, and you were still.
Yeah, it was about 16 days, but I got a call from a doctor in the middle of there, and I don't remember which day it was, because like I said, after I had the labor, I don't really remember the stuff around that. Like, I remember how I was feeling, and I didn't look at the calendar.
Yeah.
I remember, like, the day I went to urgent care is when I counted as starting, and then the day when I didn't have any blood. That's the only way I can tell what happened in between there. But a doctor did call me, and it was a male OBGYN. And he called me to ask me how I was doing. Or, no, he was calling to follow up on the blood work I didn't go to.
Yeah.
That nurse that called me and told me that I was 6 weeks and some change, and that I need to go to blood work on Thursday. That was on a Wednesday. Yeah, she was like reminding me, you gotta get blood work done on Thursday. And I was like, once I had the labor, I was like, I'm miscarrying. I don't need to go I know I'm not pregnant anymore. Like, I know I'm not. So I just didn't go. And I wasn't gonna go to the lab, bleeding, to go tell the lab tech that I didn't want to get lab work done. And honestly, calling didn't cross my mind either. Like, why would I call my doctor and say no thank you? So I received a call, and it was a male OBGYN. He said, I don't see your lab results in here. Did you not get your lab done? And I said, no. I'm home. I don't want to go anywhere. I didn't have a great experience in urgent care. I don't feel like coming in, anything like that. And he says, well, if this is a miscarriage, and it sounds like it is, or if you believe you're miscarrying, he didn't say it was a miscarriage. He says, it sounds like you believe you're miscarrying. If the blood, because I told him I was only filling a pad like every 4 hours, which was not true. But I didn't care about his opinion, so he was asking me how much I was bleeding, and I was like, oh, it's not a lot. Whatever. So he was following up from the day I tried to get the ultrasound before I went to urgent care. This was his call, like 5 days later, when I said I was bleeding or I was spotting and I wanted to get an ultrasound. This was his follow-up 5 days later to see if I was okay. Not to see if I was okay, to try to schedule an appointment to read my lab results, even though in my file it said I went to urgent care. So he told me if I was bleeding a lot, I needed to come in. And again, if any woman ever feels like they're bleeding too much, go to the doctor. I did not feel that way. I was completely comfortable and happy with the way everything was going down. I told him respectfully, like very nicely, I just said no thank you, like I'm good, thank you. And he asked me why I didn't come in and get my blood work, and I said, I know I'm no longer pregnant, I know I'm miscarrying, I don't need to get my blood work done. And he said, well, if you could come in so we could check everything out, and we could confirm that you're miscarrying. And I said, no thank you, I'll let you know if I want to make an appointment with you. And he said, okay, expressed his concern, and I said, thanks for your opinion, and I hung up. And I, of course, spouted a bunch of stuff about like the audacity of this guy to call me when he can clearly see in my chart that I'm miscarrying. But he wanted to, he asked me if I wanted to evacuate the pregnancy more rapidly. They could take care of it. And that's what set me off. So this is a really long story just to really capitalize on a couple things. One being that the pregnancy was not a planned pregnancy. We had talked about it, but it happened. The universe heard what we were talking about and chose this time. The second thing is that I was connected. And I had a different experience in the medical system, being in my body and being aware of what's happening to my body at all points throughout my pregnancy, and having that be the thing that really shook me and really made me realize I was always in my body now. I'm very conscious of being in my body. I don't escape anymore. And in scenarios like that, you tend to hear people say, like, I just compartmentalize. I compartmentalize things. Or like, oh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
It's like you probably left your body.
Left it off.
A piece of your soul probably broke off and is still there. But that's something, I was in my body the whole time. I didn't try to escape. I expressed my concern. I stood up for myself. Not something I would typically do. And then I knew I wanted to have a home birth before I began to miscarry. And when I was miscarrying, I wanted to stay home, and I told myself that the only thing is that if I feel like I was in danger, or I felt like I was uncomfortable with what was happening, that I would go to the doctor, which I'm so grateful to have the medical system as a net. But I believe that this whole experience, going from finding out I was bleeding, finding out it's a miscarriage, giving birth at home, miscarrying at home, and then having the bleeding stop, that gives me some closure in there. I was able to labor at home. I was able to see all the clots that came out. I was able to say a little something before I flushed it. It became normal after a while having the blood, because after the labor and everything, the clots stopped. It was most of the clotting came out at that point. And then it felt like a very heavy period. But telling myself that I trust myself and I trust the process, and that this baby wasn't meant to be born at full term. Yeah. And that I was connected to this baby for a reason, and that this consciousness called Ocean was with me for a reason.
You got to meet her.
Yeah, I got to meet her. I still feel her a lot, actually. Like, she's very funny, and I feel her all the time, like when I'm meditating or when I'm talking with Lainey. I can feel like the energy of her again. And that women are so freaking powerful. Like, so powerful. I did not need to outsource.
I'm telling you, when you were a gangster.
I thought I had to
that
outsource.
Process, I was like, Jesus.
So don't ever let anyone tell you that you can't do something, because I really did prove that to myself. Yeah. That I made a decision to be in this experience and not try to escape it. And not to say that there aren't complications that come with this. And there are many ways that a pregnancy can end or come to a close. And there are many ways that women choose to do that. And the fact that you have so many options is wonderful, because, It hasn't been that long that we've had this many options. But don't think that just one way is the only way. Because it's not.
Yeah.
This is just the way that I did it. And know that it could be the way that you do it too. If this were to ever come around, or if you have a friend who's maybe going through this, or is not sure if she is miscarrying, that you can be a support person for that woman to say, like, your body is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It doesn't feel like it right now, but how incredible is it that your body has the capacity to, you know, end a or give birth to a baby early, because it may not be good for you or the baby. Like, don't think that something is wrong with you, because nothing is wrong with you. It's actually so intelligent that it's doing it for you.
It's probably the best outcome for
Right.
both, you know?
Right.
So many instances that
Yeah.
something happens to the mother.
Right.
Or vice versa. So,
Right. Or, God forbid, something, you know, wasn't developing correctly in her, and we needed to start over again. Or, you know, you never know. And honestly, I don't want to say you never know, because I did know. And the absolute takeaway from this is to trust yourself. Trust yourself. I was so upset with myself for not trusting myself at the time, going through that medical experience in the urgent care. I wish I had trusted myself, because I knew what was happening and I just was too afraid to say it. And that whole urgent care could have been avoided, will be avoided in the future. But when you have an instinct or you have an inkling and you're not in immediate danger, trust yourself.
Yeah.
Give yourself a few hours, give yourself a day, give yourself 2 days. Like, don't think that you need to take action now. Try to stay away from Google. Good Lord, I love finding things out really fast, but stay away from Google.
And you could always find something.
Oh, and that narrative will feed whatever narrative you think that you need to hear.
Yeah.
And a lot of things on the internet are fear-based for a reason. And I'll leave it at that for now. But the childbirth industry, the women's health industry, is made for profit. So just understand that you are the most important thing. So when you feel like something's up, trust it. Because you're almost always right. Sometimes we're wrong. And there's nothing wrong with being wrong and needing to outsource, but you make that decision from you, not because somebody else thinks that you need to do it. And the miscarriage now doesn't seem like something that makes me sad.
No. I mean, it was sad at the time, obviously, but you were empowered, the entire time. So.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I lost Ocean.
No.
I mean, I would have loved to meet her in a physical human child, but I mean, if, like I said, when I'm meditating, if I'm like, hey Ocean, love you, or whatever, like, hey, what's up? Like, I can feel her energy. She's still around. She was definitely around for a reason. I think the miscarriage brought us closer together.
No, for sure, dude.
And like, our marriage cannot be broken up easily now. I've seen too much. But no, the miscarriage now, when I think about it, is more, and this is why I wanted to share it in this podcast, and this is why it's the first podcast episode, is because this is really a jumping off point of me really understanding and embodying and like really putting into practice now, not just saying that I trust myself or saying that I trust my body, is really knowing that like we are so intelligent.
Yeah.
You do not need books and all these things. Like, listen to what is being told to you, listen to your body, listen to your consciousness, because holy moly, like, we are incredible beings. And that's real, like, I mean, women, like, good God. Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine the things we could do if we just trusted ourselves and trust that we are amazing. And I don't know about you, but like having a daughter and having her, she would stand in the bathroom and watch me go to the bathroom and things, and I would tell her what was happening, like the baby's leaving now, like she's been born, and she watched me the whole time, and it's normal for her. Like seeing blood, she's like, "Mommy, you bleeding out of your vagina again?" Yeah. She's like, "Okay, cool. Do you need help? Like, you need anything? Do you need a hug?" And it's in that, for her to see that and to know that it's normal, and for it to be not scary, I think is really cool.
Yeah. She has a different compassion too. Like, I don't know.
She does, yeah. She's very compassionate. But yeah. Anyways, so that's our story.
Yeah.
It's a long story, but I will say that again, we created this podcast to create a community, like a meeting of sorts of people from around the world, because we are in Japan.
Yeah.
We are from the United States, but we are in Japan, and the technology can connect us no matter where you are in the world, and no matter what your circumstances, for this community to share and to feel as though their stories are told, because clearly this story is very important to us and very close to us, and we're happy to share it with you. And if you ever want to share your story, we would love to hear it and love to reach out and make new friends.
Yeah,
and
that's part of this too, is that people didn't share their stories before, and everybody would share a story, and it was just so contentious.
Yeah.
It's just like, hey, go ahead, it's okay.
And we couldn't have been the first ones to experience this, but it did feel like we're the first people in the world to have gone through this. It really did feel like we were the first ones to ever experience this.
Well, it hit us like a freight train, I think.
It really did.
Yeah.
But I mean, to know that you're not alone. You're not alone in feeling like it feels like you're the only person going through this. Because as soon as I started sharing my miscarriage story, not mincing words, like telling the full story, telling the whole almost 2-hour story, and it could go much longer. It's just being fully transparent of what happened. So many people are like, "Oh yeah, I've had miscarriage too. Oh, I had like six of them," and like, I was like, "What?" Or, "Oh yeah, I had a miscarriage. Oh yeah, I had a." Like, me too. I'm like, what? Why did you never talk about this? Like, how did I think that this was just something that happened to some women in, like, far-off lands? Like, all the immediate women around me were the ones that were saying, like, "I'm so sorry you had a miscarriage. I had one too," or whatever. I've had many. Or I had one between, like, you and whatever. Like, my mom had a miscarriage, and I didn't know that. Like, the woman that was close, that I've been closest with my whole life. Yeah. Like, just, and to talk about it. And we want to urge you to talk about it. If you feel comfortable talking about it with other people, like men talking with other men about it, because women are so used to sharing with one another that we tend to forget our partners. And so, talking with them about your experience, because they want to hear our experience. Like,
it's really all we can do, really, to be there. It's just in a supportive role,
Well, and listening to what, and as a woman, vocalizing what you need.
Mm-hmm. Taking care of other things too. And
being able to ask
give
and
you
tell,
the space and
not do it with like, "You're not listening to me," but more of like, "Hey, I could really use someone watching Lainey.
Yeah.
I could really use some alone time. Like, I watched like How I Met Your Mother. I watched like the whole season, like all the seasons.
Yeah.
But I just needed to be like alone, and like towards the end before he left for Australia, it was just like I needed to just be not touched. But I was able to ask for that. But if I hadn't asked for it, he would have thought that like everything's fine until I tell you otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, we know each other enough now that you can even tell with my body language, but yeah, you're never ever alone. and talk with each other about it. Talk with your mom about it, talk with your brother, your sister, like all the close people. Even if they're a little bit uncomfortable, share your story, because you never ever know. You never know how it's going to touch and land. And the more we share about it, the less weird and less awkward and less like surprising it is. And that's why we're doing this podcast. So we don't want things to be taboo and weird and like it's the first time it's ever happened. And so, yeah, that's our story for now. There'll be more on it. I'm sure once I listen to it back, I'll realize I've left some parts out or something, and there'll be some part 1s and 2s and 3s. But yeah, thank you for listening for as long as you have listened, and for opening yourself up to listen for this long and to receive us with love. I hope you share this podcast with your friends and your family members, and you share it on social media and all these things. We'd love to hear from you. Commenting on it and sending us a message. Sovereign Roots email is sovereign, all lowercase, sovereignroots.love@gmail.com. So feel free to send us an email. Check out our YouTube page if you're listening to this. And if you are watching this, check out our Buzzsprout page, because we'll be posting new podcast episodes every month. Hopefully kind of cranking that up as we get more into podcasting. And other than that, thanks for listening.
Thanks for stopping by.